Okay, hello again, everybody. So I'm here again with Caitlin Bloody Mary. We talked about a film a little while back, and we had a fun experience. So she agreed to come on again, and I'm really, really thankful.
Yay, I'm glad to be back. Thanks for having me back. It was great fun last time, and I'm sure it will be this time too.
Yeah, we talked about Train to Busan, which is very kind of on point, I think, for the moment we're living in. Um, Today we're going to talk about a film, a Japanese sort of horror film called Onibaba, and the translation is like Demon Hag. So this is like a really interesting film from like 1964. It's directed and written by Kenito Shindo. I'm not great at Japanese, but that's my attempt. And yeah, this is just like a really cool film. I'd watched it recently, and I thought it would be cool for us to talk about. Like, you know, it's very cinematic. It's very interesting. It's got horror elements. It's got a lot of, I feel like, kind of cultural stuff to talk about too. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, you know, we give it a watch and see what we think and feel about it. Yeah. So was there any, I guess, sort of stuff that you felt about the film when you sort of first heard about it?
I had not heard of it until you recommended it to me. I didn't really know what I was getting myself in for. I have a bit of a rule of thumb when I'm going into new films that I try not to look at reviews. I don't like to have my own opinions kind of clouded by other people's, particularly in terms of analysis. I did make the mistake on this one of breaking that rule because I was quite curious about it. And so I did read a little bit about it, but I wasn't expecting it to be quite as surreal and new wavy as it was. Yeah, the mask intrigued me. That was my first point. I was just like, I need to know. I love a mask. Like a mask in a horror film can be so powerfully used. Yeah.
Yeah, and this one, like, it really uses that sort of whatever you'd want to call it with the mask as that identity really a lot. What I really like too about this film is just like the way it deals with sort of this. Just think about like talking about Civil War in any context, and like, you know, the way how desperate people were in this film. Yeah. And I found all of that really kind of, I don't know, thematically scintillating.
Yeah, so it's set in like feudal Japan, so like in the 14th century. So it's set like in that kind of medieval period. But I found that it still was quite timeless. So even though it is set in a medieval period, it's not like watching like a medieval city film that's like about English medieval. You're not watching like a Henry V. Like it still feels very now and very current to the 1960s to me.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, it sort of felt almost like sort of in the American context like a revisionist Western in a way.
Yeah, very much so. Well, because it's that kind of thing about like the early experiences of facing war, and of course Japan had just faced a huge war that they had lost, and this was just after basically that first deal that they had with America. 1960, they were looking at new deals. So it was right after that it all happened when this film came out that they were kind of finally able to start addressing World War II.
Yeah. This definitely feels like there's some kind of context, cultural context about why this film is right for this moment in Japanese history, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. For the most part, I mean, I really enjoyed this film. It was definitely not what I expected.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting twists and turns in it, right?
Yeah, it just wasn't what I expected in terms of the overall plot. Like I found it was quite slow in places, not in a bad way, but it was I feel like you need to be in the right mood, which is why it took me a little while to to actually sit down and watch the whole thing. You really need to be in quite a dreamlike place for this film.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely like a kind of a slow burn.
Yeah.
And yeah, it kind of lingers on the characters a lot. And then there's like things that happen where you're like, where am I at? Right?
Yeah. The first 10 minutes of this film. So the first copy I downloaded, it did not have subtitles. It took me 10 minutes in to realize that, because the first 10 minutes of this film has no dialogue. It's completely reliant on imagery and almost completely diegetic sound. There's not throughout the whole film as well, there's not a big reliance on music to provide. It's very much like this like rustling of these reeds and the occasional, sound of a bird and the noise of them eating, and no dialogue for 10 minutes is pretty revolutionary, particularly in the 60s.
Yeah, I watched actually another film this guy did around the same time called The Naked Island, and it is a completely silent film.
Oh, wow.
Completely silent film of some people that live on an island, and basically they're just trying to survive. But it is a modern day silent film, and it's really good.
Well, I'll have to check that out. I'd like to see more of it.
Yeah, that's another one I would definitely recommend from the same director. So this guy, he's kind of used to doing that sort of purely visual filmmaking.
Yeah, it's very much influenced by, I would say, that kind of French New Wave style. As most people that watch my channel know, there is a Jean-Luc Godard poster behind me when I film. I'm a huge fan of that French New Wave, and I think there was a lot of that being influenced with this particular film, that kind of strange imagery, allowing the camera to take its time, being brave enough to have some quite strange imagery. Just, very interesting film.
Yeah. So let's just cover a couple of plot points and then just sort of talk about things more broadly. So like you said, like the film basically the film opens with like some title cards, and then it's like, the characters that say it. So like one is like the hole, and it's like the deep darkness. It's lasted since the old times, and then so there's like this hole in the ground, and we just see this hole, and then it kind of takes us into the story, which is, we see these weeds moving in some very like beautiful imagery, but sort of ominous,
It's ominous and relaxing at the same time. Like, out of context, you could have these shots like on a YouTube video with like a meditation, like some meditation chill music, and you'd be like, oh, this is beautiful. Yeah. But there is something about it in the black and white that does feel ominous.
Yeah, and then we see these two samurai, they're running through the grass, and one of them is carrying the other, and he's kind of limping, and they're trying to get away from another guy, and then there's the guy is on horseback coming after him, and so then they're able to hide, and the guy goes away, and we see them get stabbed, right? We see them get stabbed to death. It's like, oh, well, I guess they got killed by someone, like another, samurai. But no, he gets killed by these two women. So we see these two women kill these guys, and we're like, whoa, wait, what? So this is a samurai movie where the samurai are getting killed by women.
Yeah.
And it's like...
And peasant women as well. They are poor women. So it's this complete restructuring of how we would expect a samurai film to go, like from the get-go.
Yeah. And then they loot the samurai's bodies. And they like dump them. I'm pretty sure they dump them in the hole.
They dump them in the hole. Yep. Yeah, that's where.
And so it's like, well, it's because like, what do you think? Like the whole samurai genre has made the samurai the hero, or at least the anti-hero. But now, so like, are we supposed to hate these people? But like, they seem so desperate.
Yeah, and it seems to be, everyone seems desperate. Like, even the samurai that are the ones killed, there seems to be a sense, there's a real pitifulness to them. They don't feel like the heroic, feel no pain samurai that we have been trained into seeing. that, yeah, they'll sacrifice anything and they don't feel pain and they're strong fighters. There seems to be a real pitifulness to them as well. So yeah.
Yeah, too, because like the samurai, it's all about like honor, right? It's really just like an honor. Chivalry is like I guess the Anglo equivalent, and these guys don't seem very honorable. Like
there's nothing honorable about anyone in this film.
Yeah.
There's no honor amongst thieves, so to speak.
Because the honorable thing would just be to stand there and die and take it, and you die in the field of battle heroically. But no, they're running, and then they get killed by these women.
It's probably a much more realistic portrayal of samurai, that people would have been frightened when they were in these situations, and they would have just run. These two women anyway, they are mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. Yeah.
Yes, so it's the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. Then we see them salvage a bunch of the stuff they stole for food from this guy who's basically takes the weapons and the armor, and he's then selling them to other samurai to fight this civil war.
Yeah.
So it's all just like, wow, super gray area characters. It's awesome.
Yes. Yeah, because once again, it's like he's not an honorable man either. Like none of the characters are without sin.
Yeah, because he kind of asks like, "Oh, where'd you get it?" And then they all just like, "You know where I got it." And he's like, "Yeah, okay, I'll still give it to you. Here's some more rice."
Yeah.
But it's like that. Like, I don't know if I've ever seen a samurai movie like this.
No.
Right.
No, it is different and it is a samurai film in many ways. It's just we are looking at a samurai film through the lens of people that aren't in the samurai film. Do you know what I mean? It's like
yeah.
There's a samurai film to me. It's always like, so here's the screen, and this is what we're seeing, and a few kilometers away, there's a samurai film going on that's a classic samurai film, but we are just outside of that shot, and we're watching the outskirts of a war. Yeah, delivering the war story to someone else entirely.
So there's like the Akira Kurosawa movie. It's like Ran is going on, and then while Ran is happening, we're seeing what happens to the people who are affected by the civil war of these samurai clans.
Yeah.
Which is such an interesting and different perspective.
Different perspective, yeah. And there's no heroes, and So anyway, we have a man. Is it then? Am I missing anything? The man comes.
Yeah, the man arrived. This guy Hachi, I believe his name. Hachi arrives. He is a deserter. Yeah. He deserted the war.
He's had enough, and he's come home. He's just done.
Yeah, and so this is where we kind of get more of the exposition. He talks about, there's a guy in Kyoto, there's a guy in this other part of the country, they're fighting it out, blah, blah, blah. Hachi knew, so basically Hachi supposedly knew, I think it's Kichi is the name of the husband, knew him, and the mom's like, the mother-in-law's like, why are you here? Where's my son? He's like, oh, he died. He died, he's beaten to death by farmers, which is another unhonorable way to die, if that's even true. Yeah, right?
It's all left very ambiguous because we don't really know. This guy is
he's a sketchy dude.
Yeah, he's such a sketchy dude, and he's so without honor that you just think, has he just left this guy behind? He's, we don't know for a fact, and that typical movie thing of unless you have seen someone be killed on screen, you never really know if he's dead. And the mother-in-law doesn't really believe him.
Yeah,
like she's not certain that her son is dead or that things have unfolded the way that this man is telling her.
Yeah, she thinks he's a liar.
Yeah, and he is.
He's a scoundrel.
He's just lecherous. His facial expression, he does a great job of portraying it. He is lecherous. So he's come back from the war. He takes that food. He is lazy. He's constantly napping. He's not really helping these women survive. And he's already, days after he's come back, he's got his eye on the daughter-in-law. Yeah.
Yeah, like big time eyeing her. Like,
yeah. And the camera goes into his point of view a few times, and it's literally just framed on her boobs, her crotch, her bum. Like, he's not even seeing her for a person. It is a real kind of, I want to get laid. Yeah.
Yeah, and but like, you know, what I like about this too is like, you know, it's so, I don't know, like characters like that, like we have a strong reaction to them. Like, this guy is so scummy.
Yeah.
But in the little bit that we have a feeling about him. You know, it's not like there's other people, like they try to build a character in a way where they make us like them or something, and it's just like, I don't know if I really care about that person. Regardless, you feel something about this guy immediately. He deserted in the war. He tells the story. It's kind of sketchy, and then he hits on this guy's dead wife.
Yeah, and he's not showing much empathy in telling the story. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, cool, this happened. Farmers beat him to death. I'm back. Can I have some food now, please? I'm super hungry. And they keep pushing him for more information, and he's like, I'm just really hungry. So yeah, I think it's like that lack of emotion that he has as well. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I just, but I really like the character. I think, you know, he's just so, and like you said, the way that he acts, the facial expressions,
Brilliant actor.
Yeah, just like, ugh, yeah, just so grungy and scummy, and
there's just something so gross about him.
Yeah, like, he's super gross.
Crawl.
And yeah, so then right after, like you said, in that scene where he's eyeing the wife, they see a couple samurais, and so they live near this river, and then they do some fishing and stuff there to try and get food, but they're still very hungry, and they see these two more samurai come into the river, and they all three of them kind of look at each other like, "Yep, let's do it." And this guy Hachi, he stabs one of the guys with a spear, and the other two women just beat and kill the other guy, and it's just, and they're like, "Yeah, now we can eat." It's like wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I just like, I love that this film kind of goes there. What is it?
I think that's your mic. It's going a bit fuzzy on my end.
Oh, can you hear it? Is it still bad?
Yeah.
Oh, that's not good. Hold on. Let me try something.
Yeah, you kind of sound like you're doing a robot voice.
Is it better now, or is it the same?
Same.
Okay. How about now?
Robot voice.
The voice is fuzzy?
Like, yeah, it just sounds like you literally sounds like a robot voice.
Okay. All right. Hold on a second.
It's got like Darth Vader voice.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what just happened. Did you must have changed something, because it was being fine.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're great.
It's better now?
Yeah.
Or is it okay? All right, cool. Yeah, I don't know. Don't know what happened, but hopefully we fixed it.
Yeah, weird. Where were we? Oh, so they've
so they kill another two samurai, to stab them to death. And then they're like, "Yeah, now we can eat." And it's just, yeah, they just really go there with like how desperate these people are, and how the antithesis of everything that we come to expect from sort of Japanese people and Japanese culture. Like, this is not something we've seen depicted before.
Yeah, there's a real desperation to the situation that they're in. So we do get a bit of a like explanation to this situation that they're in when this guy comes back, and they're having this first discussion where they're talking about, and to me this was very much like the echoes of Hiroshima and What's the name?
Yeah, Nagasaki.
Nagasaki, yeah. Very much the echoes of that, where none of their crops are growing and they're really struggling to grow anything. There seems to be some like environmental issues going on. So yeah, there's a real desperation, and with all the men gone, they're struggling to farm in general with all the men are at war. So there is just this real desperation to that situation where how are they going to feed themselves?
Yeah, and so that's basically that's why they're killing these samurai, stealing their armor and swords, and
And then
selling it to this other guy.
yeah, yeah,
Crazy, yeah. Yeah. And like you said, this dude Hachi is so lazy. He's not helping them like
not helping
fish.
much at all. There's one point where the mother-in-law kind of is waking him up, and he's like, "What are you doing? You're asleep in the middle of the night." And he's like, "Yeah." There's a good sense of humour to this film in points where he's like, "Yeah, I like to nap."
Yeah.
Like, but you need to, like, we're starving to death. Like, get up and give us a hand. And he's like, "Oh, but it's so nice to like sleep in the middle of the day, and it's been so hot." Yeah, so listen, I hate to one of my pet peeves in film analysis is that every single person tries to relate every single film or TV show to it's about the 7 sins, the deadly sins. But I feel like this film actually kind of is about the deadly sins. And I hate it because it is overused so often, and people will desperately try to find a way to make any film about the deadly sins. But this one to me is, and that was very much about the sloth. Like, he represents that sin of being just super lazy.
Absolutely, yeah. He's just because, like, as we come to understand, he's basically just into getting food by killing people and then having sex.
And
right?
having sex.
That's it. That is it for this guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
He has no other interests at all.
No other personality traits other than the fact that he wants to have sex and occasionally eat food.
Yeah. And then the rest is just napping and trolling the mother-in-law.
Yeah, being a bit of a dickhead. And that's about it for him. Yeah, so I guess it did come to a shock to me in general that this daughter-in-law one actually really fancied him.
Yeah, maybe she's just sort of sexually desperate too, because who knows how long this guy's been away, right? Maybe he's been away for...
What's going to go on, and so she starts sleeping with him, which to me was a real shock. I was like, oh, okay, this is where this film's going.
Yeah,
Yeah, I hadn't seen it going that way. So the mother-in-law is obviously not okay with this because this is her daughter-in-law. And there's also, once again, this sense of like envy from the mother-in-law about this girl's youth and beauty, and this actress that plays the daughter-in-law is stunning. Like, she is stunningly beautiful to look at. And there is a sense of jealousy, and she tries hitting on Hachi, and he's like, "You're an old hag. You're too old.
Yeah.
You're not interested." And that's when she starts getting really jealous, envious, and worried that her partner in crime, literally, is going to leave her and not help her kill samurai anymore.
Yeah, she's the mother is like afraid of basically being left alone and basically being left to die, right? She won't be able to do anything. She probably is not going to be able to jump these samurai by herself anymore. And so her prospects would be very grim if the daughter-in-law leaves her. So it's sort of self-preservation. That's like kind of the first moment where you see her kind of reveal her vulnerability. Before then, she's very hard. She's very kind of,
that to me is something that I would have liked to have seen her more vulnerable from the start, because to me it felt like it was a very sudden shift, because I couldn't believe that this also, because I loved the mother-in-law. I thought she was fantastic. Like, she's a very strong character.
Yeah, she
She's the
is.
one who does a lot of the bartering with the man that she sells to. She's the one that has got that power and control. So when she's like, if you leave me, I'm not going to survive, I'm thinking, yes, you will. Like, you don't need this daughter-in-law. I've got no doubt in my mind that you will be able to kill samurai on your own and make these deals. I am more worried about the daughter-in-law and that lazy sod than I am about you. And then I start wondering, yeah, once again, is it because she just doesn't want to be alone? Like, it's more about her feeling envious of this young girl and that her sexual relationship with this man that she obviously wanted to sleep with too. And it's complex, but I'm not sure if it's necessarily in the best kind of complex way. I think I would have liked to have seen her more vulnerable in the beginning to fully understand who her character was.
Mm-hmm. If we saw some vulnerability, like when she was first, like if they had a conversation before they did the bargaining with the guy, maybe.
Yeah.
Because I did like that. Like you said, there's a hint of the jealousy, but also, it makes sense in this world that she would be afraid of being alone. Like, that's an old woman by herself.
Yeah.
Seems definitely like doom in this world. But, as you say, the film presents us with her as a hardened person.
Yes.
She does not waver to kill. She's very calculating as well. We see her calculating how she's going to try and manipulate the situation between Hachi and the daughter-in-law. So, yeah, it would be nice if they bridged the gap in a narrative way.
Yeah.
But I did like that they gave her that dimension.
Yeah, there was definitely dimension. I just would have liked to have seen it done maybe a little more smoothly for myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then like later on, again, Hachi is like he's being lazy and doing his own thing, and then we see them kill a dog too. They see a dog running through
which is always like that's always a moment in the film when you realize how desperate things are getting when someone eats a dog. Like, yeah.
Yeah, so they cook this dog, and then the next day Hachi kind of trolls him, and he barks like a dog outside of their hut.
Ironically, there's literally a dog barking outside my house. I don't know if you could hear that, but there was literally a dog just barking. Fantastic.
Yeah, right on cue. Thank you.
Right on cue. Thanks, mate. Thanks, Rory.
Yeah. So now, like the film takes, I think, the most interesting turn. So, like, again, so the daughter-in-law and Hachi have been doing this thing where, like, at night, the daughter-in-law will wait for the mom to go to sleep and then bounce, and they have their little affair.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and so then one night, she takes off, and then the mom is gonna go and follow them, and then she sees this. So, like, she sees a sword through their hut, and then this samurai wearing an Oni mask appears in her tent. And then he goes on this long spiel like, "Oh, I'm a samurai from a good family. I need you to show me the road to Kyoto." And she's like, again, she's always very calculating, and she's trying to.
She's smart. She's like, I'm not going to go with you. And this is something that I feel is so relatable to any particularly a woman. It's like, no, I'm not just going to go with you and help you because you might kill me. It's how Ted Bundy got his victims, was he preyed on a woman's innate need to help people. And she's smart for that. She's like, nope, I'm not going to immediately trust you and want to help you. I don't have that particular maternal instinct where I'm going to put myself in danger to help you. So she keeps trying to kind of be like, just go north, just keep going north. All you need to do is go north. And he's like, I can't find my way out of these reeds. Yeah.
And so he's basically says, you're going to do what I say, period. And so he forces her to do it. And so then they're walking, and yeah, this is really beautiful shots too, because it's like, again, we see the stuff with the moon, and then so it's sort of like moonlit, and they're walking by the lake, And then he starts telling the story. He kind of gets him to talk, and he tells a story about like why he wears a mask. He's like, "Oh, I'm so beautiful that I needed to wear this mask because I didn't want my face to get messed up in a war." And she's kind of like, "That's bullshit."
Yeah, and once again, it comes back to this thing of like the sins. It's like, yeah, his sin is that his pride. He's got this like huge amount of pride in his beautiful face. But yeah, she's not buying it. She's like, well, and this is a moment where I felt that she had the most vulnerability to me was when she stops and looks at him and says, "Can you show me your face? I have never seen anything beautiful before." I thought that was one of the most poignant moments in the whole film, where you believe her. She's lived this really awful, hard life, and she just wants to see something beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, again, she also probably kind of feels like she's close to death. Like, I don't think she believes that. She thinks she has to figure out a way to get out of the situation because she's not just going to show him the way and then live.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then she does. So what happens is she leads him on a certain path, and she leads him to where the hole is, and then right at the last moment, she like jumps over the hole when he doesn't, and we see him just fall in. He falls into the hole.
Yeah, which is like on a pile of skeletons. Like, yeah, so he's on a pile of skeletons. Once again, she's clever and calculated, and it's that whole thing of like, that's a very clever move. But then she's really clever about going down to get him. You know, she doesn't just like climb down willy-nilly. She goes off, she gets herself like the spike and rope, and she manages to climb down. And she tries to take the mask off him. And of course, this is where we start getting very nuclear war is when the mask is taken off. And underneath we see a horrific sight.
Yeah, his face is messed up.
Messed up. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and yeah, this is another interesting thing. Like, where do we think allegorically about this stuff with the mask? What the mask means and what it means to remove it, right?
Right. So, for me, this is the way I see it, is that she's got this crab on her robe. So I think it's the daughter-in-law's got some sort of like shellfish on her robe as well. Like they've both got water animals, and they obviously live on the water. They're living in a marsh, but she's got a crab. And of course, one of the most common crabs in Japan is the samurai crab, which is a crab that it is said in Japanese mythology took on the faces of dead samurai, because the crab has a face that looks like a samurai. And this is kind of who she is as a person, what she goes through. Like, she is that samurai crab that is taking the exterior of samurai and using them herself for her own survival, the way that the samurai crab, they say, was able to survive because people didn't want to kill an animal that had a human face. Like, it's this real survival thing of that's what she does. And the mask is just that complete representation of that she is the samurai crab that uses anything she can and uses samurais to survive.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's such an interesting kind of thing to think about, like, especially the reveal when you see what this thing is underneath. It's almost like saying, like, the outside is this pristine but frightening but powerful sort of representation of, I guess, the culture. But it's almost like wearing it, you pay a price.
Yeah.
You pay a price. And that price is like, maybe he was beautiful and then he wore the thing and it took something from him.
I read it as the fact that he probably was incredibly beautiful and handsome, started wearing this mask because he wanted to protect his beautiful face, and it
Vanity.
has and the vanity, and it has destroyed him. His vanity in himself has destroyed him.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's so interesting. I really like that element, and again, the horror stuff is just like going down and like into this pit where there's a bunch of skeletons, a bunch of basically dead samurai are down there. And there was like a shot earlier where we saw like Hachi go by it, and then a bunch of ravens flew out.
Right, yeah, and he's like looking into it, and it's that whole cave thing is, to me was very like almost the womb, like going into the earth and into Mother Nature's cave-like womb, and obviously it's the women's excuse me, the women's place where they put the men. There's some fascinating stuff going on there, and the mask itself is brilliantly done because it is able to portray all these emotions somehow to the point where you start thinking, is this the same mask? Like, how can it look so different in each scene? It's incredibly well done.
Yeah. And so then she takes off the mask. She then steals this dude's stuff, as she does with everyone else.
Of course.
And I think later on we see her sell it and everything. But now we get into basically the payoff of this film, right? So again, the daughter-in-law and Hachi are still having this affair. So the daughter-in-law waits for the mother-in-law to go to sleep. She heads out, and then she sees a woman in this white kimono with that mask show up out of nowhere in the weeds and just scares her off.
It's beautiful imagery, but yes, absolutely terrifying, I imagine, if you were walking through those reeds.
Yeah, and it's also like
it comes back to this idea that the mother-in-law had first tried to scare her off this kind of sex before marriage by telling her that sex before marriage is the ultimate sin, and she is going to go to purgatory for it because she is sinning, and her sin is lust, like this constant lustful thoughts is her sin, and she'll go to purgatory, and convinces her that demons in purgatory will forever be after her because she's having sex before marriage. So the daughter-in-law is convinced that the mother-in-law in the mask is a demon hag.
Yep. Yeah, so she like you said, like this is a way of making that stuff that the mother-in-law said stick.
Yeah.
Because it's obvious that she didn't really believe it, but once she sees the mother-in-law appear as this ghost demon thing, that scares her straight. And then they have a conversation like the next day. It's like, oh, are demons real? The daughter-in-law says, and so she's hooked into it. She believes it now.
Yeah, she is 100% convinced. So it puts her off going back to have sex with this bloke because she doesn't want to go to purgatory. She doesn't want to go to hell. And obviously, considering this is meant to be set in like the 14th century as well, I think is important to remember that people were a lot more likely to believe that demons really existed. So the mother-in-law continues doing it.
Yeah, she does it like multiple nights.
Yep.
So it's just like probably like 3 times she keeps doing it. And, again, then finally after a while it sort of settles in. It's just so interesting. Like, I love the way that he shot it too, because like the thing kind of comes up and then it's like, but like the way they lit it, like she really, like, again, the white kimono really super bright in this dark night, and it's the contrast is so cool. And again, the daughter-in-law's reactions are always just like, she's freaked out by this thing.
As you would be. Like, I don't believe in necessarily demons, but I mean, if I was walking through reeds at night like that and something like that popped out, I'd be bloody terrified. It's a scary sight. Yes, and it's terrifying.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
so then there's like a I don't know, it's like a third or fourth time where Hachi is like out at night and it's raining, and then the daughter-in-law goes towards him, and then the mother-in-law with the demon mask appears running after her. But then Hachi's able to sort of intercept with the daughter-in-law. And so then the mother-in-law like kind of goes away. And then the two of them basically have sex like right out in the raining.
In the middle of the rain.
Yeah.
And we get this like really lovely kind of comedic moment where she's like, "Oh, there's a bug on my back," and there's some nice moments that takes it out of that realm of being too art housey. There is this nice like kind of break, and there is a good sense of humor throughout this entire film, which I really appreciated.
Yeah, I like that too. I thought that was like when I watched it like a second time, and I thought that was really funny because like, oh, that's a good way of like, because you didn't show them have sex, but it's like, yeah, they had sex in the dirt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's how. Yeah.
I found really quite incredible for a film from the 1960s in Japan was and even to this day you don't see it much, is that they showed her really like having pleasure. They showed her kind of really enjoying it without getting too graphic. It was a sex scene that didn't necessarily rely on him always being pleasured. Like he's really taking care of her, so to speak.
There's this one like when they sort of do this he does this intercut where it's like the mother-in-law with the samurai and then they're having sex, and that scene was like really interesting because like again they keep going back to it's really hot, and like the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law basically kind of sleep naked, at least their tops are.
There's a lot of boobies out in this film. There is a lot of boobs. As the film goes on, there's when we first see them, they're completely covered up. And as the film goes on, there is just like it's getting hotter and hotter. So they're wearing less and less. First there's one boob that pops out, and then there's two, and then it's just all boob, and then they're sleeping naked. Like it's just there's a lot going on in terms of allegorically about sexualization of women and definitely not what I expect. I was not expecting this film to have so much sex and nudity. That was definitely a surprise to me.
Yeah, because like in that sex scene, like they're both like super sweating, and she's going at it. She's going at it. She's really happy.
She's enjoying herself.
Yeah, she's getting off. Yeah, for sure.
We see the mother-in-law humping a tree at one point. After watching them have sex, which ties back into this thing that there is a sense of envy of this young girl, that she watches them and she's kind of turned on and goes and humps a tree. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it's all really something. Like I said, all the rules get broken here.
All of the rules get broken, particularly because it is set in a time that is so distant from where we are now. So it's like, yes, it is made in the early 60s, but it's about a period of time that's the 14th century. So we're so far removed from it in 2020 that it does come as a real shock when those rules are broken, because it's not at all what we're expecting.
Yeah. But it's so cool. Like, like that's what's so cool about this film, I think, is like, it's a samurai horror film that breaks all the rules about the samurai film, but also gives us these like kind of really human portraits of desperate people.
Desperate people, which is something relatable to everybody.
And then the next thing we see is like Hachi goes back to his hut. So they both have their own huts. Like Hachi has his, and then the mother and the daughter-in-law have theirs. And then he walks into his hut, and then there's just some dude there, and he stabs him with a spear and just leaves.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, okay. And then that's the last we see of him. Like, we don't ever get any kind of death discovery scene from the women, or it's literally this like real statement about like, this is the reality of war, is that sometimes people are just dead and they're just gone. once again, that whole thing about there's no heroic death here. There's no
Yeah.
heroic, like, victory. There's no heroic defeat, which is
Yeah.
what we see in a lot of like kind of American stories about Vietnam, is this kind of like heroic defeat. But this is just done, move on. The plot moves on, and he's out of the film.
For a minute there, I thought like maybe they were gonna do something where that was the husband. That would have been.
Where you think it's going, but he refuses to give us that out. The director, he's just like, I refuse to give you this narrative that you want.
Totally, and yeah, that makes you think it's not the husband, which is, again, it just makes it so like, whoa, like,
Yeah.
like, and
people that are desperate enough to kill anybody. Like, why wouldn't they also be capable of being the victim?
absolutely, and it's, yeah, it's just so. And again, like I was saying, this is a really scummy guy, and like he's lazy, and but you feel something when you just see him out of nowhere gets killed. We don't know who, we don't know why, he's just dead, and you're just like, whoa.
Yeah,
like,
it's incredible. It's a very brave thing to do in a film.
Yeah, absolutely. And so then
no explanation, no backstory, just like done.
No, just some other scavenger like them was eating his food, saw him, killed him, left, and that's it.
Yeah.
He's dead.
That's it. Yeah, so mother-in-law doesn't know by the end of the film still that he's dead. So she goes back to their hut, and all of a sudden this mask, to me, was just a brand new mask, where this poor mother-in-law has realised that the mask cannot be removed, which gave me so much claustrophobia and made me feel so claustrophobic. That that thought of having that mask stuck on your face forever was quite grim. I wonder if there's that episode of Goosebumps where there's that similar storyline. I wonder if that was inspired by Onibaba, because it is very similar.
Yeah, maybe. That does feel like a kind of archetypal sort of monkey's paw kind of story.
I mean, Onibaba was based on an old Japanese folk story of a mask getting stuck on someone's face.
That makes sense.
Oof. Yeah, so the poor mother's traumatized. She can't get this mask off. Yeah. She's saying,
and like you said,
the rain has...
Yes, which I found interesting. And like you said, this mask, it's very much more empathetic, right? You see, like when the daughter-in-law first sees her, the mask looks very sad and kind of weak and like kind of weepy,
Yeah, it's incredible how much it changes. Like, yeah, she looks so sad, and like you just want to give her a hug. You feel so sorry for her.
Yeah, she's like, no, help me! I'm your mother. I can't get this off. Help me! And it's yeah. And then then the daughter. Then they kind of do this bargaining thing where it's like, like, oh, I'll help you get off the mask if you let me have sex with this guy. He's like, will you let me do it in the day? Yes. Will you let me do it at night? Yes. Will you let me do it the day and the night?
Whatever you want, like, just help me get this mask off.
Yeah. And so then she's like trying to pull it off. And it's like, no, it hurts. It hurts. And she's like trying to pull it, and they're fighting each other. And she gets a hammer and just hammers her in the face with the trying to break the mask.
Yeah, which you think is just the most insane idea in the world, but it works.
It works, yeah. She breaks the mask off, and then we see the mother-in-law looks like the dude in the cave who died. Horrific.
Horrific. It looks, and once again, it just looks like someone that has been the victim of a nuclear blast. Like, it is horrific. It's like blood and sores, like really awful sores, and it just looks raw and painful. It does not look pleasant. Yeah,
and then I think the daughter-in-law says like she's a monster, something like that.
Yeah,
does not see her as a person. and she runs, and the mother runs after her.
Yeah.
And then what's cool is so pretty much the last thing we see. So like the daughter kind of did the same thing that the mother did to the samurai, is leading them to the hole. So like we get the scene where we see them running towards us, and then it pans down and you see the hole. And so we're like, okay, someone's gonna go in this hole. It's a question of who. And then they're running, and then the daughter jumps like at the last second, and then we see the mom jump, and then the mom says, "I'm a human being." We see her jumping, and we don't know if she made it or not.
No, he's like, you thought you wanted an answer to this first killing? This is it. And the film ends.
That's it.
Oh, wow. And it's incredibly done with the different shots of her where it's like kind of staggering, and you keep thinking, you're like, this next shot is going to resolve this. The next shot is going to resolve this. And it just doesn't. And it's like, all right. So
yeah,
you really left not knowing and coming to your own conclusion, and it's very, very open-ended into your own interpretation, and it doesn't impact the enjoyment of the film either. You don't need to have an answer for this film. In my opinion,
you don't.
I really enjoyed I think open endings can be enjoyable, can be frustrating. I'm not someone that loves them or hates them, but here it really works.
Yeah, here it does. It's excellent. The way that it kind of goes with the theme of this whole film about how kind of it's not your typical samurai story. It's not your typical story about characters that resolve things wonderfully or positively.
There's not really a narrative journey that the characters go through. They don't really go through these big transformative changes or anything. The whole narrative structure is insanely unexpected. Everything about it. There's no beginning, middle, and end. Even the actual ending climax comes so much later in the film than we're used to. A lot of it is very slow build of building up the environment and what these people are going through. Even the fight scenes aren't the way we expect a samurai fight scene to be. They're often over and there's nothing heroic. There's not a big fight. There's not like we don't get like a sword fight at all.
Yeah, no, we just see some people get killed in a unheroic way, in a very cowardly, very antithetical to what we expect in the genre.
Yeah.
But it's all it all just goes back to the theme of like how desperate these people are. And I guess, as you would say, like people who are sinning, like how those sins come back to haunt them, basically.
Absolutely. So, I mean, to you, do you see this as a film that's a bit of a meditation on the effects of nuclear war?
Well, I think for me, I think it sort of has to do with, I feel like this film talks about the repercussions of their culture, right? The sort of the samurai. So it's almost like saying, this is what happened to actual people because of our militaristic ideals of World War II. This is what happened to the actual people, right? They lost their honor. They became desperate. And all of this stuff was a lie. This idea that, because we have an emperor and the emperor is almighty, people have to be a part of this, the samurai code. That all that breaks down once people become so desperate that they can't even live anymore. And so I feel like this is a critique of that. It's sort of like showing like the other side of the hyper-militarism. And it's a way of attacking those ideas and showing the destructive force of it on the human condition. That's what comes to my mind, because it really feels like the fact that it's the backdrop is a civil war, the fact that we even see these samurai who are so desperate and they're unheroic. They're not like chivalrous or anything. They're all the exact opposite of what we think of the set like these people would be. And I just feel like it's an allegory for pretty much what they did in World War II.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's just like, yeah, we had this strong military for a while, and then it broke down, and then this whole facade of our superiority and our honor and our everything just crumbled, and it was just people, desperately ripping each other apart.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess you could say sort of the mask is like it's like an allegory for like the way the nation, the outward,
the false perception that Japan tried to put forward.
Yeah.
Foreign people even of who they are.
And anyone who wears it destroys you.
It destroys them.
Yeah. And when you take it off, you like you said, you look like this person who's experienced like
a war.
a war, or like you saw the nuclear blast and you somehow survived.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's sort of my take on it.
Yeah, and what did you think about overall? Did you enjoy it?
I loved it. I really, really loved it a lot. I liked it. I thought it was again so interesting to see, like from the jump, this guy, like one of the first things we see is some desperate samurai getting killed by women. It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
Something like the equivalent would be in the American context, like you see Clint Eastwood and like Gary Cooper on a horse, and they're like getting away, and then you see two women shoot him and kill him.
Yeah, take all that shit, and that's it, and they're done. They're out of the film.
Take their guns, take their gold, and then go off on an adventure.
Go off on their adventure. They're desperate. They have to eat family dogs to survive. Like things that are part of the American past. That is hard. Shit like that probably did happen in those times. Like, yes, majority of desperate women, like in Japan, had to turn to prostitution. But I bet there were some women that were just badass, hard, old hags, as this film suggests.
Yeah.
That we're just like, not going to sell my body. I am in control of my own sexuality. And I'm just going to kill you and rob you. Fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's something, again, like I said, that's something that doesn't get talked about. Like, we in the media portray the people who fight wars and the people who experience the civilian, like the civilian side is like, oh, hey, we went and we built bombs and we defeated them. Or, oh, hey, I fought in the war. And then, I knew when I was going over the Saving Private Ryan kind of stuff, like I knew it was D-Day, and when they dropped the thing and I got shot, I died honorably. Now, there was a lot of people who were just like, I don't want to die. I don't want to fight. I don't want any part of this. Even World War II, the war we think is the holiest of wars, the most justifiable of wars. There are people that they didn't want to die to fight that. And it's just a human thing. It's a human thing. Survival is a human thing.
Like, it's just, and war's just not for a lot of people. A lot of people aren't cut out for that type of world. We talk about it sometimes. We're sat around having drinks, me and my mates, and we're like, God, could you imagine if so-and-so had, got enlisted? He'd be bloody useless. He cries and was mean to him. And as much as people would like to insinuate that that's a generational thing, it is absolutely not. Yeah. There are people that are men that were sensitive back then. There are men that are sensitive now. There are men that are heroic now and are incredibly brave, whether that's within, being a firefighter or in the army or whatever it is that they do. there are different spectrums, and it was like that in every place in time. There are going to be cowards that just get the hell out of there, and that is a survival instinct of sorts. Flight is not a bad survival instinct, just getting out.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's basically what this film is about, the people who ran away so they could live another day. I mean, there was even a line,
Can you hear that dog barking? Is that really annoying?
a little, it's not that annoying, it's very faint, actually.
Sorry guys.
Yeah, it's all good. Yeah, I think there's even a line where like the mother-in-law asks the guy, like, why don't you go back? He's like, go back? I don't want to go back and fight. I'm gonna
go back and die.
Yeah. He's like, I'm gonna stay here because I might get sucked back into this war.
I write down one of the quotes from that conversation because I thought it was so important. At first, we wanted to be heroes, but killing isn't easy, and it's 100%. It's incredibly simple but beautiful, and he says after that, he says, I don't even know why we're fighting. I don't even know who this war is for. I don't know what it's about. And yeah, we wanted to be heroes, but this isn't fun. This isn't heroic. This isn't like being in a samurai film. This is reality, and the reality of war, it stinks. It's awful, and it's incredible. Yeah.
So one other question I had for you. So like what kind of horror would you categorize this film as if you had to think about it?
I don't know if it necessarily would be. I don't know if I'd necessarily classify this as a horror film. I know it has killing, and I don't think it's necessarily setting out to be scary, though.
Yeah, I think it depends on the cultural context.
Like I understand, like it is being classified as a horror film, but I don't know if I would. I mean, I would say it's just that it's more art house. that strange category that we give weird, surreal films, where it's just and if it was horror, I don't think, and I've seen people say it's like a supernatural horror, and I'm like, well, it's not really that either. It's definitely much more of like a psychological horror than anything else, if it was to be anything. But yeah, I would classify it more as like a art house reinterpretation of a samurai film.
Yeah, sort of like a revisionist samurai film.
Revisionist samurai. I think it's more of a samurai film than it is a horror film.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the movie Qui-Gon?
No.
Okay. That's sort of in a similar vein of this. It's but that one, it's like 4 different stories, folk stories that are like, a lot of it's ghost stories or something like that. And that's another sort of because like
folk horror, couldn't you? Folk horror would be Yeah,
I feel like this is a folk horror because, like, again, it's like I think the context of what is horror within this universe, like when you're talking about, because a lot of these feel like the sort of morality play kind of stuff, like where you use the folk horror to tell a morality story.
Absolutely. To me, it was very much a morality tale.
Yeah.
And it was all about those different things that people do. The irony, the brilliant irony of some of it, like the mother-in-law being like, sex before marriage is a sin. And at no point does she recognize the fact that she's out there murdering people every night.
She also offered herself to this guy, like, so that she would get off the daughter.
But it's definitely all about like the punishments that we get for our because all of these characters are punished. All 3 of our main characters, anyway, are punished by the end of this film in some way for doing things that are, quote unquote, sinful.
They are, yeah. I guess that's like the big kind of takeaway, right? Is like, I guess for me at least, I feel like there's like like the big thing that the story theme is trying to tell us is like about how on a societal level, when we pursue these type of things, this, basically this type of nationalism and this sort of supremacy, because like that's really a big part of Japanese culture is they're like, yeah, we're better than the Chinese and the Koreans and everyone. And the way that what happened in World War II is they through force tried to bring themselves upon those countries, and for a long time they were successfully destroying them and defeating them, and and making them submit to their authority. And then it blew back on them when they had to fight the Americans and the Russians, and then they got nuked, and then they had to completely sort of bow themselves to another.
Yeah, well, Japan had to become very submissive to the Americans in that peace treaty. Like, they had to become very submissive, which couldn't have come easily to them as a country. And there was, America basically had the power to do anything until 1960, when the treaty was, renegotiated. And actually, it was interesting because I was looking that up, because I was like, it must have been around that year that peace treaty was re-signed. And the president that was, like, the Japanese president that was controlling that was called Kishi, which is the same name as the
husband
that gets
who's gone.
Yeah, not there. He's like, and that president actually got basically kicked out of power because he was unable to come to a agreement that both America and the people were happy with, and was ousted out of government. And that was Peachy. So he's just that he became not there either. So it was almost very intentional, almost comedic thing of like, there's this guy called Kishi, but he's gone now. He's not even a part of this narrative.
And he died a dishonorable death. He was killed by farmers for trying to steal food.
Yes. Yeah.
That's an interesting takeaway, for sure. Yeah, I definitely feel like this is a critique of Japanese culture, I think, and sort of, this is what happens when you have this hyper nationalism. And the backdrop of this film is like, basically there's the warring nationalist tribes within the country destroying themselves. Whereas, for World War II, they were submitted by Western powers.
Yeah. And I think there was a huge part of that, I mean, obviously, it's almost you can't discuss World War II without discussing nuclear bombs that ended the war. I just feel like there is such the shadow of that over this film.
Yeah.
And there still must be in Japan a part of that lingers within the historical subconscious, that it's such a huge part of that culture. And literally as well, that they are still dealing with the nuclear fallout. There's one other line that I wrote down where they're discussing why their crops won't grow, and Hachi has come back and is telling them about everything that's going on, and they're talking about how strange the world is at the moment. And he says, the sun rose black in the sky and the day was as dark as night. And the mother-in-law says, yes, our world has been turned upside down.
Yeah.
And that to me was very allegorically about what happened to the people that experienced it. So I looked it up, and there's someone said that had survived Hiroshima. It was actually an Australian. She was interviewed for our Australian Broadcasting Centre, and she said the sky was always dark after the bomb fell. We never knew what time it was. So there's that whole thing about that going on. And she also spoke in this same interview about how quite quickly after the bombs, it started raining ash, like it was raining like a black sort of awful substancey thing that was like nuclear waste. But if there was rain. It was literally rain because it had messed so much with the environment that it was like raining nuclear waste down on them. It's awful to think about. And so when the mother-in-law was saying that it was the rain that caused this awful disfigurement on her face, I just can't help but think that could be connected, that, the nuclear rain thing has disfigured her face. And that's what she believes, at least, has caused it. And that, with what happened to a lot of the people that were caught in the nuclear rain, was that it did leave them very disfigured.
Yeah, it like burnt their skin up, and
yeah, it's awful.
Yeah, for sure.
And they were the civilians. They were the people that were left behind. That wasn't an attack on the samurai / the military. That was an attack on civilians. Like, they were normal people. They were people that were at school and were at home. This girl, Junko, that I saw this interview with, she was just at home. She was with her mum and dad at home sick. And that's these women to me. And watching this interview, and I watched this interview after I had watched the film. I wouldn't mind going back and rewatching it now after I didn't know a huge amount about the after effects. I suppose it's something that's almost so abysmal to think about that you don't think about it. But those women are almost those civilians that are left behind to deal with things. And like you said, just like that overarching thing about how do you come to terms with the humiliation of experiencing that as a nation.
Yeah, totally. What's interesting, this kind of reminds me of another crazy 2020 incident, the Beirut explosion.
Yeah.
I just, just because I was curious to see what's going on, any updates. And I mean, that's so crazy, because that was a governmental malpractice. And when you see, like, that was a fraction of what Hiroshima was, right? It completely obliterated the entire country. This one explosion in a port. And you go there today, there are buildings that are still completely blown up that, will they ever get fixed? I don't know. Buildings where the windows have never been repaired. Thousands of people got injured, hundreds who got killed. And just think about, like, multiply that by hundreds of what a nuke does to a country. And they did it twice.
Yeah. And yes, it ended the war, but the fact that it was the good team, it was our team that did it, is quite confronting to accept that it was the Allies that did this attack. Is very confronting for, I think, us as a society to come to terms with, that we did something that was so horrific to another country's civilians.
Yeah, absolutely. It's traumatic, like you said. There's a trauma of, like, having this hoisted upon you, and then all these people. Because, like, the worst thing, and they talk about it, like, the worst thing about, like, the explosion. So, like, if you're right under the explosion, you got it sort of easy. Like, you're dead. You're just dead.
Yeah. I mean, if you had the choice, you'd want to be on the exact explosion site.
Yeah.
Like,
I just want to die.
Yeah,
but if you were right on the outskirts, so there's, like, basically the shock wave, and it reaches a certain apex, and then after that, you're going to survive. If you're right on the edge, you have it the worst, because you're going to live, but you're not going to live for long. You're going to die a horrible death.
So one of the other things that I know from previously reading about Hiroshima was that, and this I connected into the whole thing of it being set in the marsh and the reeds, was that a lot of the people that survived the initial bomb, like you said, those people that were, like, right on the outskirts and were, like, slowly very slowly and painfully dying. A lot of them just wanted a glass of water, but of course all the water supply in the entire of that area was nuclear. And so people were giving water to survivors, which was then just making everything worse. And yeah, truly horrific. Truly horrific for the people that were anywhere near this incident.
Yeah.
Yeah,
crazy.
and America basically, while they were in charge of Japan in these years up until 1960, would not let people talk about it. It was only in the 1960s when they were this new generation of Japanese filmmakers who were influenced by the French New Wave, and all of a sudden they had much more freedom to make the films that they wanted to make. There was, the French New Wave going on, that they were like, we need to talk about some of our history now. Like, it's time to talk about what this war meant in terms of Japanese identity.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, I mean, you talk about a lot of things go back to the deadly sins. I feel like there's a lot of stuff in Japanese culture. It goes back to Hiroshima and Nagasaki, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Because, again, like, that's just such a traumatic thing for any peoples on planet Earth to experience.
Yeah.
To experience the being nuked. Culturally, again, Godzilla is another one. Godzilla's about that.
Of course, Godzilla's the famous one. Of course it is. Yeah.
So it just always comes up, and I think it's definitely very accurate to bring it up in this context. Especially when like you said, you see that face, and it's just like the face of someone who's burnt up and like.
Yeah, it just looks like a burn victim to me. Like, awful to look at, upsetting to look at.
Yeah, cool. Well, so I mean, overall, it's like, I guess, what was your final thoughts and feelings about this film? Like, what was your final, I guess, rating? And
I don't know if I loved it. I think I'd give it like a 7 out of 10. I think it has aged. I think it is more of a film geek film than a mainstream film.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I always try to, when on my own channel I'm reviewing things, I kind of say, should you watch it? And it really depends on who you are as a person, because we all like different things. And I think if you want to watch something from a historical context within film history, you're going to really enjoy this film. And it is beautiful. There is some gorgeous, gorgeous cinematography. I don't think we mentioned the whole thing's in black and white.
Yeah.
And
very beautiful. And there's this one shot where like the mom comes back, and then there's like a crescent moon.
Yeah, right.
In the backdrop, and then there's the hut. It's all very beautiful.
Reads are just stunning.
Yeah.
But I think people need to be aware that this is not a Hollywood film. It is not fast moving. It is very different to what people expect. And it is very culturally different. You need to kind of be invested in the Japanese culture to understand it. I think I would get a lot more out of this if I knew more about Japanese culture. And that's probably my own fault for not being as educated as I could be on it. But it does mean that I don't necessarily enjoy it as much as I could.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I feel you there. I like this film a lot from like the nerd perspective, probably, like you said. I really liked I like the shots, and I like the cinematography a lot. I really like the cinematography in this film.
Yeah.
And I just liked, there's like a lot of subtle things that again, like you said, like there's so much, like the first 10 minutes is like a silent film.
Yeah.
They don't say anything, and like the way that he sort of does these shots of like the way the mom, especially the way the mom looked, like the mom had all these looks where it just said a lot without having to explain anything. Like you understood where she was, her mental space. I really like that.
Very like stage like about it. The acting. And see, once again, I feel like I would get a lot more out of this if I understood Japanese stage theatre better, which unfortunately I do not.
Yeah, totally understood. This is definitely not for. This is not a Kurosawa samurai film. This
No.
is the anti Kurosawa film. Like you
Yeah,
said, the Kurosawa film is the Throne of Blood Ran that's going on.
yeah, it's going on just off screen.
Yeah, like there's even a shot where they see a fire, they see a pillow
That's
of
right.
some black smoke.
Like, oh, there's fighting going on over there, and it is just off screen. There is a samurai film going on, but yeah, this isn't the kind of film that you have some mates around, and you don't know them through film geekdom. They're just some mates, and you invite them over, and you get some popcorn and pizza out to watch a film. They're gonna be like, "What is this? This is for your film geek friends."
Yeah, I think so.
Like, oh, this is angle. For context,
I would be hard pressed to think of a samurai film that's really like very pop entertainment. Maybe some of the like Yojimbo.
yeah, true. That
Maybe.
slower paced and.
Have you ever seen it? There's a film called Sword of Doom. Have you ever seen that film?
Nah.
Oh man,
There's a huge amount of samurai films.
Sword of Doom is it's the Wild Bunch of samurai films.
Okay. Yeah, maybe I'll try and watch a few more samurai films. And once again, like when I'm saying I give this like a 7 out of 10, it's like it's my own fault because it's not a genre that I feel like I would get a lot more out of this if I was better educated on some of the nuances of it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like
I do.
It's like someone that like laughs at Austin Powers but has never seen a James Bond film. It's like, yeah, you're finding it funny, but you're not really quite getting why.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm from that point of view now where I'm like, I can see that this is a really great film, but I'm not sure I'm getting everything out of it that I could. And that's my own fault for not being better educated, not the directors.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot to chew on with this film for sure, I think.
I'll see it again.
Yeah.
I'll watch it again, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Well, yeah, I think that's our review for Onibaba.
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in and listening to us talk about it.
Yeah, thank you. And Caitlin, thank you for coming and being on, even though this was kind of a difficult film for you to get through, or was it?
Yeah,
it wasn't as enjoyable as Train to Busan. We'll have to find maybe in the future we'll find something like that.
Train to Busan is like a modern action film, but I love this film. I thought it was a great recommendation. But I needed to be in the right frame of mind to watch this one for sure. For sure.
Yeah, that watching zombies on a train. When can you not want to?
And it is awesome. It's like it is one of my favorite films in recent times. So there's no topping that really for me. I would watch Train to Busan over and over. It's just so enjoyable.
Yeah, it's a great film. It's a great film too.
Great film.
All right, cool. Yeah, so that's it, everybody. Thank you so much for stopping by. So Caitlin, how can people sort of find your other work and?
So go check me out on YouTube. I don't upload a huge amount. I've currently got a video that is in copyright strike purgatory itself. If anyone wants to let Fox News know that I am in fair use, that'd be awesome. Just give them a yell and say all you need to do is look at it and realise that it is fair use friendly. So hopefully one day soon they'll release that. I do lots of Buffy reviews and talk about horror films over on that YouTube channel. Go subscribe, that'd be awesome. You can check out my Instagram, which I don't use that frequently either, but there's occasional things of like my op shop find of the week or some sort of political meme. Go do that.
A lot of stuff about Everton, right?
Yeah, and Everton Football Club, of course, the one true love of my life. Yeah, football, film, and fashion. That's me.
That sounds really awesome on it, actually. I think a lot of people could get behind that.
else do you need in life? That's just everything you need. Like, you know how there's that barbecue beers and freedom shirt? Mine's just football, films, fashion. Someone make
Yeah.
it for me. Send it to me. That'd be great.
When's your birthday?
June. So everybody, that's all I want is just like hundreds of those shirts to arrive for June next year.
June
And,
next year? Okay.
With the amount of times that it's taking with the COVID shipping issues, send them now.
Send them now and you might get them
To Australia.
2 years from now.
Yeah. June in a couple of years. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, cool. Sounds good. Thanks a lot, everybody. And, hopefully we'll see you guys again.
See you guys